Now, Eric, I know you've got kids. They're a little older, but this week, and for any of the parents out there, I feel you. I'm with you. It's been a bit of a grind. Today was the third Christmas concert for the kids at school in 6 days. 3 separate ones for the three separate kids.
Wow.
And today's piece de resistance, and I sent you the video, so you know I'm not telling tall tales here. I'm not fibbing. I texted you the video. There's a young gentleman that starts stage right, moves to the stage left, and while I think they're singing Jingle Bells, unfortunately ends up barfing off the stage onto the floor. I don't know if it was nerves, excitement, maybe he's a little under the weather, but you saw it. He blows chunks. He lets fly. And a trooper, he stays up there. And it's funny. And the mom and dad, it was like a delayed reaction. It took them 30 to 45 seconds. Everybody saw what was going on. 30 to 45 seconds before they came over and thought anything was good. Now, Eric, if your kids would have got sick on stage, would you have not probably ushered them out, said, we better go? No, they kept hung around. They stayed for cookies after. This poor young guy, he's doing cookies and snacks after the show. Yeah.
That is wild. The temptation would be to just leave and just say, well, that's what teachers are for, to clean up the mess and figure that out. But that's actually not the right response. And It's not what you'd actually do. It's not what you'd actually do. But I guess you would have a dilemma, wouldn't you, as a parent? Like, do you run up there and help little Johnny? Or are you just letting them tough it out? Yeah, you go, like, did the parents, I didn't watch after, I don't know how much of the video you sent after I got out after the puking. Did they come up and comfort him, or did a teacher who was the first to get to the scene?
I was sitting closest. Maybe that's a reflection on me. But anyways, one of the teachers ended up running up, and it took the parents about 45 to 60 seconds before they casually came up to the side of the stage to be like, okay, and then kind of pulled them off. And then the show had to stop for a couple of minutes. Cleanup crew came in and then went from there. You feel bad. These kids are 4 and 5 years old. They're up there singing their hearts out. They're jingling their bells. They're doing their things. And he was, but he rallied. He stuck around. He was not missing Christmas cookies and juice after this.
No.
So here's what I did. Because the Buffalo Sabres are doing this, I called a team meeting with everybody. I got the teachers and the assistants involved. We had a closed door meeting. We got everybody involved and said, listen, by the time the spring fling rolls around, this can't happen. I need a better effort out of everybody. We need to go out there and put up a W, because today was an L. Eric, what's going on? What's going on in the NHL? Closed door meetings everywhere, and they never do any good. Look at Buffalo, closed door meeting with the Pagulas, and they go and lose their 11th straight last night to Montreal.
And they lose in horrific fashion too. Like it was a statement game, but not the kind of statement you were hoping for, right? It was basically like, yeah, we hear you. We understand that this is on us. Guess what? We can't figure this out. So maybe you're going to have to step in. I mean, clearly the general manager has to go. I mean, I think I said this Monday. I mean, I don't think anybody in the league really believes that Kevin Adams deserves a chance to stay, nor will get a chance to stay. I mean, he's built this monster and it's terrible. And listen, I can tell you that anytime people in Calgary talk about burning it down and doing team tank, and you hear this in different cities, because I think a lot of people, I would say actually the majority of fans, believe you have to burn it down before you can build it back up and have any semblance of a championship team or a contender. And I don't agree. I don't agree. Yeah, it has worked in the past, but for every team where it's worked, there's 5 teams where it's not worked. And the Flames ownership group, for example, if you ever were to get them to go on the record and talk about why they'll never let it get burned down here, they'll point to Buffalo. They'll point to Ottawa. They'll point to Detroit. They'll point to the Oilers up until last year. And they'll say, look how long these teams were just wandering in the woods, and you're losing millions and millions of dollars in ticket sales every year because you're tanking and trying to rebuild. There's no guarantee that if you burn it down, you're going to be able to build it back up to be even close to what it was before. So now, I'm not saying in Buffalo you shouldn't burn it down. I don't know what the answer is, but you need a new general manager, some new set of eyes to go in there and decide what the best way to go is, because they have some incredible parts in there. They have some real cornerstones in that organization, they're just not filling in the cracks and getting the right leadership and culture around them. And that's all on the general manager to me.
Well, and Terry Pegula's never been a guy that's shy to fire people, whether it's in football or hockey. So Kevin Adams mysteriously keeps his job. All right, we're chatting with Eric Francis. We're Inside the NHL. It's brought to you by Southie Mainline Chrysler. Hold the payments for 90 days when you purchase a new vehicle with Southie Mainline Chrysler. Over $13,000 off select 2024 Ram 1500s and 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokees. And if that wasn't enough, on top of that, up to $10,000 cash back. All right, Chris Drury. Not a bad player, not a bad general manager, until the last little while where it seems everything to do with the New York Rangers is going wrong. So they had a closed-door player meeting where the word out of there is not a lot of people are happy with how Drury is handling this team now. And last night they were in Nashville. And Nashville's like, and keep in mind, between Buffalo, Nashville, and the New York Rangers, all three dumpster fires, the Rangers end up losing to Nashville. What's the way out for the Rangers here?
Yeah, that one, it seems to me like they're going to be able to play their way out of it because there's just too much talent, too much depth. But now Panarin's injured. He's been out the last couple of games. I don't know how long and he's going to be out. But you're right. I think the way Chris Drury kind of went public by telling everyone we're going to trade the captain and has been kind of saying it for a long time and then recently dragged Chris Kreider into it. These are two... Well, I might go as far as to say cornerstone players. I mean, they're two of your best, say, 6-7 players. And yeah, they're not playing up to standards, perhaps. And maybe there's, I guess threatening publicly is some people's idea of a good idea to let everyone know that they're available. I think it's a horrific idea. I think you want to keep stuff in-house as much as possible. I hate to say this as a journalist because I love it when people spout off and go public with their plans. But come on, who thought that was a good idea to call out two guys publicly? I never think it's a good idea to call guys out, period, anyway. I mean, they know internally and inside an organization who's in the bad books and the good books and who should feel shame and all this sort of stuff. But don't tell the whole world that these guys are not worthy of being New York Rangers anymore, basically. It's that's been that is the most shocking to me of all the bad seasons that we're talking about. Buffalo, I mean, whatever. It's been a tire fire, that team, that city for a long time. But but the Rangers, as early as this year, if I were the kind of guy who, I stopped betting online a long time ago, but that's a team, a top 2 or 3 team I would have put money on to win the cup this year. And I still think with Shesterkin and some of the core players they have on that blue line and up front, they still will make the playoffs, and I still think they could be a contender. But oh my God, this has been not only an ugly episode, but now there's bad feelings in the room because of the way the general manager handled it. So it's just not been handled well. I'm not suggesting this GM needs to go as well, because I think Drury's done a pretty good job building this team up from pretty low down in the totem pole. And he's done it pretty quickly. But boy, this has not been handled well.
Well, the surprising thing about Drury, let's say if this was an off-ice general manager that never played. He was a stat geek guy and depended on analytics and got his job through, like Chicago's GM, working his way up and doing all of that. But Drury, if anybody should know, is even if you want to get rid of these guys, keep quiet so you can keep the trade value high to be like, listen, you're getting Chris Kreider. Like, we don't want to part with this guy, but we kind of have to. You keep the value as high as possible. So from a former player, it's odd to hear that kind of stuff come out. So last night, I was watching Netflix, the first 2 episodes of Enigma, the Aaron Rodgers story. And I'm not sure if you had a chance to check it out yet. It's beauty material. Like, if you loved him, you're going to love him even more. If you hate Aaron Rodgers, you may end up throwing a fist at your 65-inch flat screen or whatever, because you're going to be so mad watching this because he's such a ding-dong. So after the second episode is over, I turn it off, and the Flames are going to overtime. It's the Boston Bruins. And I'm like, oh, totally forgot. Flames are playing Boston tonight. I love me a good Brad Marchand. And then in overtime, you realize, and maybe it was just me, man, is David Pastrnak good. And he is elite, and he scores that goal, and guys like that, and I'm like, That's exactly what the Flames don't have. Is a guy like a Pastrnak. Huberdeau, maybe in the old days in Florida or whatever, but if you were at the game last night, Pasta and his performance, I only saw overtime dominant. Just worldly.
Yeah, it was a beautiful goal, and guys like that take over games in overtime and when it matters most. And you're right, if you don't burn your franchise down to the bottom before building back up, then you probably aren't going to get those superstars, those generational players. I might even put Pastrnak in that sort of term, a generational player. Like the rate at which he's scored is, he'd be top 5 or 7 in the last 10 years in the NHL. And this is part of the argument that people had. It's funny, I'm doing the game last night, and we do our broadcast from the concourse. Our TV hits on the intermission and everything. So throughout the game, we've got everybody coming by, saying hi. Everyone's got an opinion. Bruins fans want to tell you why they're great, blah, blah, blah. But that was what one guy pointed out. He goes, you guys will never have a pasta. You'll never have a pasta. And we have one, and that's why we're going to win tonight. And sure enough, the guy was right. But, the Calgary Flames have a lot of nice pieces, but they've scored more than 3 goals in a game once in their last 30 games. Think about that. Once in 30 games. They don't have anyone who can put the puck in the net with any sort of regularity. Kadri scored 4 in a row games. Sure. And we know Kadri's a 30-goal scorer in the National Hockey League. But, Pastrnak is not a 30-goal scorer in the National Hockey League. Pasta is a 50-goal scorer in the National Hockey League and has done it when it matters most in the playoffs. So, yeah, that was fun to watch, unless you're a Flames fan. But that was a bit of a clinic in overtime, the way they methodically I don't think the Flames got a shot on goal in overtime. The Bruins controlled it from the time overtime started until Pasta, ultimately finished it.
So Craig Conroy, you're kind of a tough job because you're kind of like, you're not the worst team. You're obviously not the best team. You're kind of stuck in the middle. It's almost one of these, where do you go? Like, is it worth adding to your cap this year to get a guy now that maybe he'll pay off in the next couple of years? Do you ride this out? It's too bad Kadri's deal is so long and unattractive to other teams, because if he, let's say, only had 2 or 3 years left and he's scoring, he's playing well, I bet you a lot of teams would be willing to take that on because he's playing some good hockey and he could probably get you some good assets in return. They're kind of, once again, for the decades, kind of mired in no man's land, not the worst, not the best. Where do you go?
They've been in the mushy middle for the 30 years I've covered them. I actually got my stat guy at Sportsnet to tell me, over the 30 years I've been here, where do the Flames sit in the standings? Because it's been my kind of gut feeling that they're like right in the middle. He gave me the stats, 17th. Exactly the worst possible place that you ever want to be in the National Hockey League. That's one spot out of the playoffs, but never good enough to get a real impact draft pick unless you kind of get lucky. So that's where the Calgary Flames are, and that's where they want to be. I call it a high build, a hybrid rebuild. It's a new approach. You haven't seen it in the league very often. The model is Dallas. Dallas kind of did this where they didn't have to burn it down. They just got really fortuitous in a couple drafts and drafted brilliantly, and now are one of the best teams in the league. And they're hoping that they can do the same thing: stockpile draft picks and hopefully get lucky with a bunch. And we're starting to see some youngsters who are really starting to blossom with Connor Zary and some of these other guys, Martin Pospisil and Dustin Wolf. But your point is interesting. I don't think that Kadri's contract is prohibitive around the league. It's 7 years at $7 million a year, and he's got four years left after this. Yeah. I think with the growing cap and the role that he can play, the proven role he had in Colorado when he was the second line center and helped them win a cup, I think that is a very tradable contract. I really do believe that at $7 million for a second line center, like, the Calgary Flames are dying to find another center. They've been made it clear around the league, we need to replace Elias Lindholm, who we lost a year ago, and they can't find anybody to do that. I wrote a column on the weekend about how, let's connect a few dots here and look at the possibility of a Sam Bennett coming back to Calgary next summer as a free agent. And it might sound ridiculous, but the Flames need a centerman. He's 28, so he's a little older than you'd want to kind of invest in, but they know who he is. They know what he is. Second line center. He's a character guy. He rises in the playoffs, but also he says he's on record because I talked to him when he was here in Florida on the weekend. He said, what turned his whole career around when he went to Florida? And he said it was playing with Huberdeau. Oh, guess who plays in Calgary now? Wouldn't it be magical if you could address your biggest need in the organization, which is center, and also help your most pricey asset kind of bounce back and be productive again? Like, it's a long shot, both of them are, but if you could make it all happen, it wouldn't be the craziest thing you ever saw. So it's just something I wanted to float out there in case it eventually starts to become more of a reality. But I bring all that in because what if Florida decides, look, we can't allow Sam Bennett to become an unrestricted free agent at this summer and not get anything for him, kind of like the Flames did with Tkachuk. We're going to trade him. Well, if you're Florida, what about trading for Nazem Kadri? Okay, you're giving up a character center in Sam Bennett, but you're bringing in a guy like Kadri. Now, you may say, well, that's a lot of money they can't afford anyway. All I'm saying is I do think there are some fits around the league, and if a contender got a big injury up the middle, I think the Calgary Flames would be one of the first calls that they made.
All right, you bring up the Florida Panthers, and the other night they played, it was Monday, they played the Edmonton Oilers, and I was flipping channels between Monday Night Raw and a host of other things. I'm like, oh, Edmonton's up 4-2. I'm not a huge Oilers guy. I'm like, okay, looks like they have this in the bag. And then I see later on Twitter, I'm like, oh, and they come back and Florida wins 6-5. Does Matthew Tkachuk love living rent-free in Edmonton Oilers fans' head? Because they played a very uninspired game Saturday in Calgary. The Flames won 3-0. I'm like, these guys look like they would much rather be anywhere else. But then the Edmonton game, and then to come back to win. And I'm like, there's Chucky doing it again. It's kind of fun to watch.
He loves to hate Edmonton. This was the first time that Tkachuk came to Calgary and they didn't boo him every time he touched the puck. And I do think the Johnny Gaudreau situation has a little bit to do with that. I think, people in the city are just proud of our athletes, the Sam Bennetts, the Matthew Tkachuk, the Johnny Gaudreau. It's like, God, why would we boo these guys? They put in so many good years. It's really changed the mindset, I think, of a Flames fan. But the point is, one thing, they didn't seem very inspired in Calgary. They left Calgary. They've gone now 3 games in a row, and they'd only scored 1 goal over their previous 3 games. Then they go to Edmonton, and it's almost like they decide, oh, yeah, we're really good. Let's try tonight. And even though they were down 4-2 against a team that's on a roll, they put it together, and that makes me realize that the Florida Panthers are still the best team in the National Hockey League, especially when they want to be. To come back like that in that fashion, in that building. And who was leading the charge? The guy who's hated Edmonton more than anybody, and the guy who is hated in Edmonton more than anybody, Matt Tkachuk. You're so right. He feeds off that stuff. It makes him a better player, and that's why he's a superstar in the league, because things like that motivate him. The hatred from the other side, from a player, from a fan base, from a city, it all makes him a better player. That is what makes a superstar, in my opinion.
5 games in the National Hockey League tonight, and I think one of the best ones, although Anthony Stolarz is hurt and he's going to be out for a while, the Toronto Maple Leafs were playing some good hockey under Chief. We're going to take on the Dallas Stars. To me, that's the most intriguing game tonight to see, because you've got 2 pretty good teams, and I know we're a long way from the playoffs or whatever, but an interesting December hockey game to really see, all right, are the Leafs for real? And what about the Stars? To me, that would be, it's going to be better than Jets Ducks, I think, if you're just asking me on all the 5 games that are going to be played tonight.
I think that's a pretty good call for sure. I think, I've been on this show I've always said I love Dallas. I love the way they're constructed. Now, losing Chris Tanev was a big deal to them, and I think it did change their blue line a little bit. I don't think they're as good right now on the back end as they were last year in the playoffs with Chris Tanev. So interesting. I bring that up just because he's now with the Leafs. He'll be playing his former team, and he's going to be especially motivated tonight. Not that he has to prove anything wrong. He had a great experience in Dallas. I spoke with him throughout. But, yeah, that's going to be a great game. 2 teams that are both going pretty well, and both teams with fantastic goaltending this year. We expected that out of Dallas. I'm not sure we thought those were the comments that we'd be making to describe the Leafs. And even though they've had a couple different goalies in net, now we're going to see a couple more. It looks like they've had great goaltending, and that's not something you hear about in Leafland very often since what? Cujo? No. I'm not sure. He probably is the last one, but yeah, it makes them a really dangerous team. Look, Leafs have been dangerous for what, 6-7 years until the playoffs. So, but while the regular season's going on, real fun to watch.
All right, we'll wrap on this. This is our last show before the Christmas break with you because we're off next week. Peter Laviolette, Andrew Burnett, and Derek Lalonde. Rangers, Predators, Red Wings head coaches. Will one of them be fired before January 1st?
Oh, I thought you were going to say before Christmas. Oh, man.
Well, it could be for Christmas. I'm being generous with the Christmas break because maybe there's a billionaire owner there with the heart going, we can't fire him on Christmas Eve. He's got a family and kids. Who fires somebody right before Christmas? That's heartless. You can't do that. It would be terrible.
Nobody does.
Nobody does that.
Listen, nobody does that. I would say, God, that's a tough one because so many companies, not in pro sports, but so many companies do have a policy where we don't fire in December. Anyway,
but Peter Laviolette, hot seat, Andrew Burnett, hot seat, and Derek Lalonde, hot seat. I think that it's Lalonde in Detroit that doesn't make the new year.
I think it's Brunette who doesn't make it. And Barry Trotz has shown tremendous patience and as a former coach has empathy for these guys, knows Brunette's a good coach. I don't know, maybe that big win last night over the Rangers will turn things around for Nashville. I kind of doubt it. But, you know, Brunette to me is the one who I just think would go the quickest. But I think you could make an argument for any of those three. I guess the question is, are there Grinches out there who are going to ruin these guys' Christmas and holidays, or do they wait till the first week of January? Because if you give me to like January 10th, I say at least one, probably two of them are gone by January 10th. If you give me that much of a window.
All right. Happy holidays, my friend. It's Eric Francis, our NHL insider. It's brought to you by Southgate Mainline Chrysler. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric Francis.
You can't rap yet. You got to let him vote on the Christmas songs. Oh. His Blue Christmas is up right now. You got to let Eric vote on this.
Oh, look at that.
Oh. Yeah, well, it should be Blue Christmas. I'm only that other side of the bracket I'm not supporting. It's either Feliz Navidad or Blue Christmas. I can't support the other side of the bracket.
Yeah, but
Blue Christmas is the Final Four?
Yep, up against Feliz Navidad.
Oh, I'm so proud. That's my baby. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm voting for Blue Christmas, and I'd like to cast actually 7 votes for it, if I could. This is America, right? This is America. We can vote as many times as we want.
This is a mail-in ballot. We don't have. It's going to show up late.
We don't have the electronic voting machine, so you can vote as many times as you want, Eric.
Do you have a pick between hard candy and Let It Be Christmas, or are you letting that settle itself?
No, you know what? Doesn't matter because they're both going down to Blue Christmas. This is great. They're going to win. My song wins. Oh, this is a Merry Christmas. Thanks for letting me vote.
All right.
Of course.
You'll be watch your Venmo for your Christmas bonus. We'll send it through as soon as the bracket wraps. Don't call us. We'll call you. It'll get caught up in the it's caught up in the postal strike, your Christmas bonus at the moment. Happy holidays, Eric. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Charleston Hughes will join the all-new Sports Cage.